We continue now at the top of Daf Yomi Mesechet Nedarim. This is Nedarim Daf 10b. The Gemara continues with the statement of Rabbi Shimon: Minayin shelo yomar adam laHashem ola, laHashem mincha, laHashem toda, laHashem shlamim. How do we know that a person shouldn't say Hashem's name first when he brings these various karbanos? He shouldn't say laHashem ola, laHashem mincha, laHashem toda, laHashem shlamim. Talmud lomar karban laHashem. The pasuk says karban laHashem. You should always say the word karban first. The kal v'chomer, it's a kal v'chomer. Umazeh shelo niskaven elo lahazkir shem shamayim al ha-carbon. If this person whose only intention was to say the name of heaven on the carbon, Amra Torah, carbon LaHashem, and the pasuk says you got to say carbon LaHashem because again we're afraid you're not going to say the carbon parts and you're going to accidentally say Hashem's name in vain. Levatala alachas kama v'kam. If somebody says Hashem's name completely levatala, completely in vain, how much more so that is a problem. And the Gemara continues, Leima ketanoi. Let us say that this is a machlokas tanoim. This is referring to the machlokas Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish on the previous Amud. There was machlokas. What is the idea behind these kinuyim, these substitute terms? On the one hand, you could say that these were foreign languages, and on the other hand, you can say that this was the lashon shebadu chachamim. That was Reish Lakish's opinion, that the chachamim formulated that you should say these words instead of, let's say, the word carbon, you'll say konem, etc. So let us suggest that this is actually a machlokas tanoim. Machlokas Tanoim is as follows: Beis Shammai Omer, Beis Shammai say kinuye asurin. What if you have a substitute word of a substitute word? According to Beis Shammai, that also creates the prohibition. Beis Hillel Omer kinuye mutar, and Beis Hillel say no, the substitute of the substitute, that is still mutar. And the Gemara says, my love, is it not? Mando Amar kinuye asur. And the one who's strict and says that the substitute word is asur, kasavar kinuyin lashon umosein. So he holds that kinuyin is a foreign language, and therefore, since kinuyin is a foreign language, that foreign language can extend to a substitute of a substitute. Ulamand Amar mutarim, and the one who says it's mutar, kasavar lashon shabadu len chachamim, holds that no, these words were formulated specifically by the chachamim, so substitutes of those words are not going to count. And the Mefarish over here says kinuye asurin shem nadar bekinuye, meaning to say again, the person made the neder, the person made the oath with a substitute of the substitute. To cause savar kinuyin de tanan b'masnisin lashon umosem, that he holds that the kinuyin in the Mishnah is lashon umos, it's a foreign language. Umishamachim kina b'lashon acher mehani lashon umos chashav nami neder v'yasur. So if you use some other term from the foreign language, that would also be asur. That's the Gemara's first suggestion within Beis Shammai. Ulamand amar mutter kasavar lashon shabadu lem chachamim. And Beis Hillel, who say it's mutter, holds that the kinuyin is just formulated by the chachamim. Umishamachim mutar, and for that reason it's mutter. Dahani udebadu len chachamim asurim. Avalim kim v'lashon acher delo badu len chacham mutar. It was only these terms formulated by the chachamim. But if you use some other language, etc., so it's not going to be the same thing. And the Gemara says, no, it could be that this machlokas Beis Shammai Beis Hillel is not the same machlokas as Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, the Kuli Alma, Kinuyin, Lashon Umosein. It could be everybody agrees that Kinuyin is a foreign language. Beis Shammai Savri Bahani Nami Mishtoy Umos. Beis Shammai hold these terms also. The foreigners use these terms. Beis Hillel Savri Bahani Lo Mishtoy Umos. And Beis Hillel say, no, these terms are not used by the foreigners. Viboy same. If you want, I could say a different answer. Beis Shammai Savri Gazrinon Kinuye Mishum Kinuyin. Beis Shammai is simply saying that we make a gezerah. This is the decree. Beis Shammai is just being strict, that we're saying that the substitutes are usher because of the substitutes themselves. Beis Hillel Savri lo gazrinan kinuyin mishum kinuyin. Beis Hillel say no, we don't make a gezerah by the substitutes of the substitutes because of the original kinui. And the Mefarish explains Bahani nami mishtayumos. It could be that Beis Shammai hold the foreigners use this as well. Bahani nami havi kinuyin atzman. It's the same as the other substitutes. The masnisin of our Mishnah v'asir and it's usher. Beis Hillel Savri lo mishtayumos bachi. And it could be Beis Hillel hold that the foreigners did not use these terms, v'lav lashon umos ninu mutar, and it's not the foreign language, and therefore it's mutar. Or another possibility, gazrinan kinuye, and it could be that Beis Shammai is being strict because they hold that we make a gezerah on the substitutes of the substitutes. The asiri atu kinuyin asman, they're prohibited because of the original substitutes. The masnisan of our Mishnah, the lashon umos, and again you could say that everybody agrees that it's a foreign language. And the Gemara continues at the two dots, hechi dami kinuye de Nedarim. What's examples of substitute terms of Nedarim? Tani Rav Yosef taught mekanmina, mekanchina, mekansana. These are all substitute terms. Hechidami kinuye kinuyin dechayrim. What are substitutes of chayrim? Tani mavsha taught. Charakim, charachim, charafim. Those are all substitutes of substitutes when it comes to chayrim. Kinuye kinuyin de Naziros. What's example of substitutes of substitute terms by Naziros? Tani Rav Yosef taught. Mechazkina, menazchina, mafichna. All of these again are kinuye kinuyin. Iboilu, they had the following question: Mifchazna mai, mischazna mai, misazna mai. What about those terms? Amar le Ravina le Ravashi. Ravina said to Ravashi, kinma mai. What about if a person says kinma? Konem kamar, is that a term for konem? O dilma kinmon besem kamar. Maybe the person is talking about sweet cinnamon that comes from a pasuk. Amar le Ravacha b'reider Rav Chia le Ravashi. Ravacha b'reider Rav Chia said to Ravashi, kina mai. What if a person uses the term kina? Kina shel tarnagolan kamar. Is he referring to a chicken coop? O dilma lashon de konem, or maybe that is also a language of konem. Tiboy, the Gemara says all of this we leave as a question. Kinuye kinuyin de shvua hechidami. What would be a substitute term of a substitute term regarding shavua? And the Gemara says shavuel, shavusiel, shakukel. Those are all different substitutes of substitute terms. The Gemara says shavuel. Is shavuel really considered a kinuye kinuyin? Shavuel ben Gershom mashma. That could be mashma shavuel ben Gershom. That's a person in the Tanakh, and that's a proper name of an individual. That should not be a kinuye kinuyin. And the Gemara says, Ella, rather, you're right, Shavu Voil, Shavu Seal, Shaku Koil. Those are all going to be, again, the kinuyim of Shavua. And they take from the gear, so they take out the word Mahu. The Gemara here continues, Amar Shmuel. Shmuel says, Amar Ashbisa lo Amar Klum. A person says Ashivsa rather, that's nothing. Ashkika lo Amar Klum. If he says Ashkika also, that's nothing. And Karinsha lo Amar Klum, also Karinsha, that is nothing. Those are not substitutes for Shavuas or for Konim, for Nedarim. And the Gemara continues at the two dots, Nadar b'mohi hareilu kinuyin. If a person takes the neder, says he's taking a neder b'mohi, by mohi, as we'll see in a moment, that refers to Moshe Rabbeinu, that also counts as a kinui. Tanya, we learned in a brayser, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel Omer. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, Omer b'mohi lo Amar klum. If he says b'mohi, that's nothing. But b'mo masa de Amar mohi. But if he says, and this is what the Mishnah meant as well, if he says, with the oath that mohi said, hare elu kinuyin l'shavua. That is considered as a kinui. That's considered as a substitute term for shavua. And the Ran over here says, Vachi Perusha de Rav Shimon ben Gamliel lifrushe masnisan asi. He understands that Rav Shimon ben Gamliel is coming to explain the Mishnah. Techi katani nadar b'moi lo da'amar b'moi b'lechud. It's not that you just say the word b'moi. Ela da'amar b'mo masa da'amar moi. What you have to say is, by the oath that Mohi said, kalamar b'shvua shenish ba Moshe, means the oath that Moshe Rabbeinu, Mohi refers to Moshe Rabbeinu. Kedechsiv, like the pasuk says, Vayoel Moshe l'sheves hasa'ish, and that refers to Moshe Rabbeinu also involved in a shvua, and that's what the person has to say in order to make a proper shvua. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Ha'omer lachulin sha'ochalach. Let's say a person says, lachulin here means to say lo chulin. That which I eat of yours is not chulin, meaning to say rather it's a carbon, it's prohibited. Or lo kosher, it's not kosher. Velo dachi, it's not pure. Tahor means to say also the lo goes on tahor as well, it's not pure. V'tameh, or he says it is tameh. Noser or pigel, or he says it's like noser, or it's like pigel. Asr, all of those are terminologies that make the food and make it prohibited like a neder. And the Mefarish over here says, Omer lechavero lo chulin sh'ochalach lahavi. That which I eat of yours should not be chulin. Ma sh'ochalach ela karbon lahavi. It should be a carbon, asr. That is considered a language of a neder, and that those items are prohibited. O shamar lo kasher sh'ochalach, lo tar sh'ochalach, o shamar tameh sh'ochalach, o noser, o pigel. Any of these languages, it's not kosher that I eat of yours, it's not pure that I eat of yours, that which I eat of yours is tameh, or it's considered like noser, or pigel. B'chol ani l'shonos have a neder v'asr. All of these languages are considered like a neder, and that creates a prohibition. And the Mishnah continues, Ki imra, ki dirim, ki eitzim, ki ishim, ki mizbeach, ki heichol, ki Yerushalayim. Let's say use any of these terms. Ki imra meaning like the sheep, the keves that's brought as a carbon, or kedirim that refers to the pen where the animals are kept. Ki eitzim is the wood, ki ishim is like the fire of the mizbeach, ki mizbeach or like the mizbeach, like the heichol, like Yerushalayim. Nodar be'echon mikol misham she'ha mizbeach. Let's say he makes a neder using as an example any of the items that are used to serve the mizbeach, like the kalim. Afal pishalo hizker carbon, even though he didn't mention carbon, hareza neder nadar b'carbon. This is considered a neder by a carbon. All of these terms terms also create a prohibition. Rabbi Yehuda says, Ha'omer Yerushalayim lo amar klum. If he says Yerushalayim, that is nothing, that's not going to create the prohibition. The Mefarish explains, Ki imra shamar harei ki imra de mashma keves tamidin. The word imra is mashma like a keves that's brought a carbon tamid. Kedir behemo shel carbon, it means like an area where the animals of a carbon are kept. V'yestamri kedira eitzim. Some people say it means the area where the wood is kept. Ke'eitzim mashma ka'atzei hamarocha. Eitzim is mashma the wood of the mizbeach. Ke'ishim ke'isho shel mizbeach. That's the fire of the mizbeach. Another bechor mikol meshamshe mizbeach. He makes a neder with anything that's used on the mizbeach. Bechlei ha-mizbeach, kamizrak or kamachta. Any of the kelim of the mizbeach. Asr ba'oso chayfet shenadar ba. Whatever item that he used to make, that he made the neder with, he is asr with that particular item. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph.